What if the most painful thing you've ever experienced wasn't a loss at all, but an initiation? Stay with me, because what the greatest spiritual traditions discovered about human growth will completely reframe every relationship you've ever had to let go of. Here's what most people get wrong about outgrowing someone. They call it betrayal. They call it abandonment. They spend years wondering what went wrong. But the ancient wisdom keepers understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to confirm. Not every connection is meant to last forever. Some are meant to transform you, and the ones that hurt the most when they end, those are the ones doing the most sacred work. Carl Jung said that people don't have relationships. They have encounters with mirrors. Every person who enters your life reflects back something essential about who you are at that moment. But here's what he discovered that will change everything. When you start to change at the deepest level, when your soul begins to vibrate at a different frequency, some mirrors can no longer reflect you accurately. And that's not a failure, that's evolution. But what happens next is where it gets truly profound. The mystics called it soul graduation, the moment when a chapter of your life doesn't just end, but completes itself. There's a fundamental difference, and once you understand it, you'll never experience loss the same way again. An ending is accidental. A completion is intentional, written into the fabric of the connection from the very beginning. Think about the people who shaped you most. The friendship that consumed your early 20s. The partner who broke your heart open. The mentor who pushed you until you didn't need pushing anymore. Jung identified this phenomenon precisely. He called it the provisional life, the relationships that exist not as final destinations, but as necessary stages of psychological becoming. They were never meant to be forever. They were meant to be formative. And here's the part that will send chills down your spine. According to the world's oldest spiritual traditions, from the Sufi mystics to the Stoic philosophers, every soul chooses its teachers before it fully understands what it needs to learn. The person who hurt you most may have agreed, on some level beyond ordinary understanding, to play exactly that role in your story. Not because pain is good, but because certain awakenings can only happen through rupture. You cannot grow into your next self while holding tightly to who you used to be. But here's where it gets complicated, and why so many people stay stuck for years, even decades. The spiritual process of outgrowing someone doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with clarity. It arrives as discomfort, a restlessness you can't name, a silence that stretches between two people who used to fill each other's worlds with sound. You start to notice things. Their certainties feel like ceilings. Their comfort zones feel like cages, not because they've changed, but because you have. And this is the moment Jung called the beginning of individuation, the terrifying, sacred process of becoming authentically yourself. The tragedy isn't that you grew apart. The tragedy is mistaking that growth for failure. What the spiritual traditions understood, and what modern psychology confirms, is that guilt is the shadow side of evolution. When you outgrow someone, the ego interprets it as abandonment, as cruelty. It says, "Who are you to want more?" It says you're leaving someone behind. But the soul knows something different. The soul understands that the most loving thing you can do for someone you've outgrown is to stop pretending you haven't. Stagnation masquerading as loyalty is still stagnation. And now here's the insight that changes everything permanently. The Sufis spoke of fanaa, the dissolution of the self into something larger. Every genuine spiritual relationship serves one of two purposes. Either it reflects who you are, or it reveals who you're becoming. The relationships that end, they almost always fall into that second category. They were revelation vessels. They cracked you open precisely enough for the light to get in. Rumi didn't write about wholeness. He wrote about the wound, because he understood what Jung would later confirm through decades of psychological research, that the crack is not the catastrophe. The crack is the entrance. But what comes after the crack is what most people never talk about. When you truly outgrow someone, something alchemical happens in the psyche. The grief you feel isn't only for them, it's for the version of you that needed them. You are mourning a self that served its purpose and must now be released. Jung called this the death of the provisional personality. The ancient traditions called it initiation. Every culture on earth has a word for it because every soul eventually faces it. The question is never whether you will outgrow people. The question is whether you'll have the courage to honor it when you do. Here's what the awakened ones discovered. Holding onto a connection you've spiritually outgrown doesn't preserve the relationship. It preserves the wound. You stay small to keep the peace. You silence your expansion to maintain the familiarity. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to resent not them but yourself for shrinking, for staying, for choosing comfort over calling. And that resentment, that's your soul knocking. According to Jung's theory of the shadow self, everything we suppress becomes our shadow. When we suppress our growth, our unexplored potential, our hunger for expansion, it doesn't disappear, it festers. It emerges as irritability, as boredom, as that hollow feeling of being physically present in a life that no longer fits. The spiritual traditions were precise about this. A soul that refuses its next evolution doesn't stay still. It begins to contract. You were not built to stay the same. And this is the final truth that the mystics, the philosophers, and the depth psychologists all arrived at through completely different paths. Outgrowing someone is not a betrayal of love. It is love at its most honest. It is saying, I honor what we were too much to pretend it's still what we are. It is choosing truth over performance, growth over comfort, becoming over belonging. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your relationships defined you as, not who your history confined you to, but who your soul, in its deepest and most uncompromising wisdom, always knew you could be. The people you outgrow are not failures of your heart. They are proof of its expansion. And here is what you must carry with you. Every soul you've outgrown left a gift inside you before they left, a lesson you couldn't have learned any other way, a part of yourself you couldn't have discovered any other way. They came, they cracked you open, and they completed their sacred contract with your becoming. This is not loss, this is graduation. You are not broken because you've outgrown people. You are not cold, you are not selfish. You are someone who has had the courage to keep evolving in a world that constantly tempts you to stay the same. And that, according to every wisdom tradition that has ever mapped the landscape of the human soul, is the most spiritual thing a person can do. Grow, and even when it costs you, especially when it costs you, because what waits on the other side of every ending isn't emptiness. It's the next, truer, more luminous version of yourself, already there, already waiting, already whole.